Okay, everybody, thank you very much for joining us. My name is Mike Peterson, and I'm the founder of Science and Design. And we have two special guests today that will introduce themselves in just a moment. I have a couple of announcements that I want to share with you. We do this monthly webinar series, and it's turning out to be pretty successful. People are enjoying it. I want to let you know that on September 18th, we have another webinar, and we will welcome to the show Professor Richard Taylor out of the University of Oregon. Richard is a specialist in fractal patterning, and he'll be joined by his design firm out of Austria, a firm called 13 and 9, and Anastasia and Martin Lesjak will be on hand to discuss the world of fractal patterning and the health benefits that are derived from fractals. On October 9th, we have another special guest, Ty Farrow, the author of Constructing Health, an architect in Toronto. Ty has been speaking around the world recently at Barcelona. In the next couple of weeks, he'll be in Singapore. And we're very fortunate to have Ty speaking with us on October 9th. He talks in terms of the extended mind, how our mind is not confined to our brain, but extends beyond our bodies into the immediate environment. He talks about the person-to-person relationship we have with the environment, not person to place, because the environment is alive with influence on our minds and bodies. And very, very importantly, on October 24th, I'm inviting all of you to join me at When Design Heals, How Interior Design Shapes Health, which is a full day of education on October 24th at High Point Market. We are really excited about this. The agenda is jam-packed with academic scholars and people that'll help your business. We have Jennifer Walsh, who is our keynote. She's a strategic advisor to the Brain Health Initiative at Harvard University, and she's a faculty advisor to the Penn Center for Neuroaesthetics. And she'll be talking about beauty and nature and biophilia and how they influence us and how they should be used in design. We have Lori Weitzner, author of Ode to Color, who will talk about the health benefits of color. Andrea Keller is a past professor of architecture and design at University of Southern California, talking about fractal patterning. Now, lots of designers have been asking me, how can they market their newfound knowledge in science? And so the afternoon sessions are devoted to marketing and messaging. We have Erica Soret from Soret Creative and Katie Decker-Erickson, business coach, and her podcast is Success by Design, which I just did a week ago, and it just hit actually today. Will be helping you position your brand as a science-based and health-based design firm. Justin Alves from Jola, a website development company, will help educate us all on positioning science on our websites. And we'll close the day with a panel moderated by Andrea Lillo from Designers Today magazine. And we have 3 science and design certified designers who will be talking about how their business has changed and the new successes they're enjoying. One of the things that I'm really excited about is that I'm a passionate believer in helping the next generation. One of the things I hear from designers is, I wish I had heard about this 20 years ago. So 7 or 8 months ago, I started reaching out to universities and design schools. So we are inviting the senior students of the design schools of 5 different schools local to Central North Carolina. They will be joining us and interacting with all of the senior interior designers that will attend this special event. I hope to see you there. There is an early bird incentive, so go to my website and click on the events, and you can sign up. Please do so. It's going to be a great day. Let me introduce our guests for today. We have first, and I'm going to ask them to talk just a little bit about themselves to start us off. Dr. Rebecca Tapia is a faculty member on our Science and Design Certification Program, and she's based out of San Antonio. And Rebecca, if you could just share a thought or two on who you are and what you do.
Sure. Thank you so much, Mike, for inviting me. And thank you for creating such an interesting and fun community on this topic. And I had long dreamt that there was a community when I found you, and then the one you were developing. I'm just so happy to be a part of it. So thank you for that. So my name is Rebecca Tapia. I'm a physician. I practice brain injury medicine. So I've always been interested in the brain and the world around it. I have a side passion. I'm a super fan of interior designers because they really do the programming for the visual environment for my patients and the functional environment for my patients. And I've just really enjoyed the connection with that part of our healthcare team. And I did a presentation for the certification. That was a lot of fun as well. I'm also a podcaster, have a lot of hobbies. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here and share what I might be able to add from the perspective of a healthcare professional.
All right, thank you, Rebecca. And Kate Bendewald out of Denver, please, and a science and design certified designer. Kate, introduce yourself.
Hi, good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you so much, Mike, for having us. I'm really thrilled to have learned about this series and grateful to be able to join you. So my name is Kate Bendewald. I am a Denver interior designer. I've been doing design here in this state since 2009, and it's been really exciting and fun to bring in the science and design aspect. When I'm not running my design firm, I also run a membership program for interior designers called Designers Oasis, which is a community and resource hub for interior designers who want to run a profitable and joyful business with resources, memberships, and tools. So we've had some of our members have gone through the science and design certification program as well. So it's been really fun to help them take what they've learned in the science and design program and start to fold that into their marketing. So that's been really fun as well.
Good, good, good. Well, listen, everybody, today we're going to be talking about programming and how we extract from our clients the information we need to create what I call a design diagnosis. So let me just start with Rebecca and Kate and ask you, how do you both start a patient or a client interview? Rebecca, do you want to start us off?
Sure. So, in my perspective, half of it starts before you even walk in the room. And I know we're going to talk a lot about the information that I have on hand before I even interact with that person. So, the amount of effort or thought that's put into the information gathered beforehand can start to help build the trust. When I sit down with a patient, I'm very attuned to the comfort level. So, when I'm starting a patient interview, I obviously introduce myself, but then I'm also forewarning them that I'm a very nosy and curious person, and I do that because I want to be really thorough. And that way, they're already prepared for me to maybe ask some questions that aren't normally asked in that setting. It's kind of the first salvo, if you will, that, hey, we're going to go in some different areas, and that just gets them more comfortable. So it's not sounding like a routine interview, and then suddenly I come up with a really strange question. So I like to just start that from the beginning. I'd like to make it more about me wanting to do a good job for them. And this is information that I have found in my experience has been helpful. And that is really just setting the stage for some of the things we're going to talk about later today of me asking some, like I said, maybe some more personal questions that are going to help me do some, a better product for them down the road.
So you want to let them know up front that you're going to be digging pretty deep
Yeah,
so that
yes.
they're not surprised when you do.
Right, right.
Okay. Kate?
You know, my process isn't entirely different. I do think it's important to set the stage before meeting in person for the kinds of things that you're going to be talking about. And I think when you're talking to a doctor, sometimes we sort of expect to have to talk about uncomfortable things, but you might not expect that when interacting with an interior designer. So I think that part is really important too, and also to help them understand why these questions are important. I let my clients know from the very moment we have our first discovery call that I am really looking at design through a lifestyle and health lens. How is redesigning your environment going to impact your entire lifestyle, the way that you feel in a space? But also now that I'm understanding more about the science and design perspective from you also how will it impact your physical health? So they know where I'm coming from when I'm starting to ask these questions. But before we meet in person, I do prime them with a questionnaire that gets them thinking about some of these things. So that's helpful. And I use that as a jumping off point for our in-person conversations.
Now, when we talked before, Kate, you mentioned that the first questions are pretty simple, and the deeper you get into the questionnaire, the questions are a little more involved. Can you share what that may be?
Yes, absolutely. In psychology, there's this idea that you can get people into a pattern or get people sort of started in saying yes or opening up. And
Mm,
so when you can ask these initial questions, so in my questionnaire, just, they're kind of some of the questions that you might expect to see in an interior design questionnaire. Um, color pattern, that kind of thing. But then as they go through the questionnaire, it starts to get a little bit more in depth and asking about, where did they grow up? What was their home environment like? Did it have an impact on them? And it's interesting to see how people really they enjoy getting into those answers and harkening back to,
mhm.
like, oh, maybe that's why I love X, Y, or Z. um so the reason I start with those simpler questions is to just sort of prime them and get them started, before diving right into some of the heftier questions.
And I think Kate just said something, well, Kate and Rebecca both said something that's very important. And for our audience, they mentioned the word health. I would dare guess that 20 years ago, health and well-being wasn't included in an interviewing process. But today it's becoming so much more a standard. And that's one of the things that science and design can help us all do is better understand how we need to design for health rather than just creating a pretty room. What are you looking for when questioning a patient or a client? Is there anything specific? What are you trying to extract from them? Rebecca?
Sure. So when I start, there's actually a lot of training, medical training about how to do the patient interview. And there's standardized protocols for how to do it, but it starts a lot with open-ended questioning. And what I always want to try to do is encourage an organic answer. If you get into too many kind of closed answers of yes, no, sometimes the brain can fatigue pretty quickly, and just the quality of the answers might deteriorate over time. So what I'm looking for is, in that setting, some questions that will let them talk naturally and organically, and they might spontaneously give me some information. And I actually hold that information in higher regard. If I say, what brings you in today? And they say, my left hip's been hurting for, 3 days, that's usually a lot better information than me asking, where has your hip been hurting? Because I got extra information. I got that it was 3 days long. I could hear the tone in their voice when they described it. And that's adding a lot of extra context to the answer. And so I always try to start again with those open-ended questions and then drill down kind of those second or third order questions. And that's usually my strategy. So the main thing I'm looking for are pain points, goals, objectives, like the top reason that they're in front of me or what brought them in.
So when you say open-ended questions, just so everybody understands, you're talking about the how, why, where,
Right. It's a
when.
leading question would be, last time you were here, it was because your left knee hurt. Is it still hurting right now? And really the only answer to that is yes or no. So that's considered like a closed or directed question.
Hmm.
And it doesn't allow them really, the way I'm even posing the question doesn't really allow them to expand, because it leads them to think I'm looking for a yes or a no. An open-ended question is, I'm waiting for your narrative. I'm waiting for you to tell me what's going on, if that makes sense. So I'm not looking for a yes or a no or a very specific answer. And it's even just in your body language. Like, I'm open to hearing what's going on. What brings you in, what's troubling you. And I'm not just, going in and trying to make it a very short, focused, it has to be this yes, no type interview.
Well, you'll get a lot more information with
Right.
an open-ended rather than just having an answer be a yes or a no.
Right. And that's why I was saying, in my experience, and this is a lot of, doing this for a really long time, a couple decades, is that the information is just higher quality when it comes from them organically without me leading them or without me making them feel like you only can answer this way or that way. And I just think the quality and the accuracy of what the patient is reporting is higher because I wasn't trying to lead them, this way or that way. That there was some room for some nuance, I guess, is the best way to say it.
Kate?
Sure. So when I'm looking, or the things that I'm looking for when interviewing clients, and really this is once we've started working together, this is not necessarily the discovery call, although that might come in a little bit. Actually, that's not true. I do ask some questions in the discovery call, but really that initial sort of, I call it the first date, get to know you client conversation is where we really start to dig in. And so often I'm looking for what's underneath all of this, because it's so important to not just look for what are they saying, but what are they not saying. And I want to give you an example. In her course, she talks about how community is so important. And we know from, the blue zones, like people who live in community live longer, and community is a really important aspect of health, and just in general connection. But I was thinking about a client who came to me for a kitchen dining area renovation. And at first it was the typical, like, it's ugly, it's dated, it's dark, whatever. But when I got into that initial deep dive interview, what I uncovered was something a bit deeper. And that was that her kids were both now in high school, and in her mind, it's sort of this ticking time of when she's going to be an empty nester and they're going to be gone. And at this age, if you have kids this age, they develop their own social life and they're gone a lot more, and you're spending less and less time with them. And so for her, the underlying issue was she was feeling really stressed and sad about her kids eventually leaving. So she wanted to create an environment where they would want to come and spend time, and where they would bring friends, where they would sit in the kitchen and do homework. And for her emotional and mental health, that was really important. But unless you're willing to get into those deeper questions and probe a little bit more, sometimes you can miss that. So I'm looking for not just what are they saying, but what are they not saying, and how can we sort of move past the surface level stuff and get a little bit deeper. And that really, for me, is, excuse me, comes to asking why and why again and why again. And that's how you can get into some of those underlying reasons for doing this. And then all of a sudden it's like way more important, way more interesting, and way more fun. And then maybe we want to bring the kids in and talk about, like, what would make this a cool place for them to hang out. So
Interesting. So do clients always have on the tip of their tongue all the right answers, or how do you get them to open up, clients or patients? Kate, why don't you take this one first?
yeah, oh no, not at all. We very often get the same repetitive, when I ask clients, how do you want this space to feel? It's like warm, right? Okay, well, what does warm mean to you? And we have to get it can mean different things to different people. Does it mean that they want it to feel calm? Do they want to feel connected to the outdoors? Do they want it to feel more organized? So when they give you that first answer, I would encourage you, don't stop there. Ask them, what does that mean to you? Like, if you were to close your eyes, what do you envision? Is there a place that you've been to that invokes this feeling? What are the textures? What are the colors? What's the lighting like? And one of the things that I struggle with, but I've gotten so much better, is like, just shut up and let them talk. And don't be afraid to let some of that white space just sit there, and just let them think for a minute without jumping in. I think sometimes we get uncomfortable with the uncomfortability of quiet, but trust me, it's okay. If you just will give it some time and let them kind of think through it, you'll get much more interesting and effective answers to help you do your job better.
Too often we try and fill the void of emptiness. It's funny because I come out of the advertising business, and one of the things I had to teach my advertisers was that white space is not something that needs to be filled. white space on a page in a magazine is actually a design element. So you don't need to fill every square inch. So there's a parallel to what you just said, Kate.
Oh,
Rebecca?
cool.
Yeah, this is a great question, and I'd say there's a lot of nuance and art to it. In order to get somebody to open up, one of my favorite things is to normalize ahead of time, because they might feel isolated or embarrassed, or and we talk a lot about side effects of medications, or people with this condition might have this embarrassing side effect. So what I say is, oh, I've seen a lot of patients that have complained about sexual dysfunction or constipation or something, and they're like, oh my God, she said that out loud, but that opens a door for them to say, oh no, I've never had that, or now that you mention it, I have been having that side effect. And so if I don't normalize ahead of time, I have a low chance that they're going to volunteer that information. And especially in what we do, there's a lot of side effects of things that people don't even want to mention, or they feel like maybe it's in their head or they're crazy. When I'm really trying to get somebody to open up, one of my other favorite go-to phrases is help me understand. And so we're talking about the white space. So the white space can go by, and then help me understand that better. What makes you say that? Help me understand, what motivated you to come and redesign this space. So help me understand, I think, is coming to a situation and saying, I'm the one that needs help understanding. And then the brain likes to help other people. And so it's okay, let me help you understand it. So it's given it a task versus just why. Why? Like if we're going in third or fourth order, why? If you say, help me understand, it's a prompt to the brain and the other person to help you. And that is a little bit different recruitment in the brain, a different part of the brain that wants to help. And then sometimes they'll actually be able to articulate a little bit more or give you a little bit more information in those settings. So to summarize, it would be normalizing ahead of time, saying I've had previous clients or I've had previous considerations here, and having that kind of already pre-deployable in your head. And then the second one, help me understand.
Three simple words that can just open up a conversation. Help me understand.
Yes.
And they almost want to help you then. They want,
Right. And it sounds different, right? I mean, in almost any situation, not just design, but help me understand. It just, the other brain in the conversation is going to engage with that differently than why did you do this? Why do you want this? Because that just sounds like you owe me something, you owe me an answer. But if I say, help me understand, then what's happened is in your brain, you don't owe me an answer, you're trying to help me. And you can imagine the energy around helping somebody else is different than feeling like I'm being questioned or, they just need an answer from me. It's just a little bit different chemistry in the brain.
All right, so let's get a little more specific. What are some of the specific questions that you use to get people to open up? We've already heard help me understand, but what are examples of other ways you get them to open up? Kate?
Do you want me to take that one?
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to share a question that's on my questionnaire, and this is something that folks get after we've had a discovery call and before we meet for the consultation. So the first part is like, tell us about your home and the sort of what you're wanting and hoping to gain. But then towards the end, we start to ask questions about lifestyle. And then there's one specific question that I want to just call out. So I'm somebody, and I'll just share a little bit about my own personal journey. I, about 2 years ago, started out on a personal health journey for myself because I realized just how impactful stress is on the body. And I learned this in your program that 90% of doctor visits have a stress component to them. And I thought that was pretty incredible. And if you just look at the speed in which we're moving these days, it makes sense. And your whole program really helps this all gel and is very validating, thinking about, from an evolutionary perspective, we weren't designed to live the pace that we're living and the environments that we're living, and we're really disconnected from nature. So it makes a lot of sense. So I've started to incorporate this into my branding. I have a guide called The Science of a Happy Home, which is a lead magnet that I created on my website for potential clients who want to learn more about this concept. So they have access to that. But then in my questionnaire, it says this. There's a section called Healing Homes. And I say, is it okay if I just read it?
Yeah.
Okay. In my guide, Science of a Happy Home, I talk about the importance of design to help regulate the nervous system. Your environment can become a tool for helping you feel more at ease so that you can live your best life. This is a safe space. As a highly sensitive person myself and one who struggled with anxiety over the years, I can attest to the power of healing environments. So I'm saying that to frame it, to sort of normalize it and talk about my own experience. I say I've worked with families and individuals over the years with a wide range of challenges. That's very true, and helped them create nurturing spaces. It is my goal to help you create a personal environment that provides you with a sense of overall well-being. Your responses are confidential. If you're comfortable sharing, please share any of your personal challenges or goals for well-being. And so then there's a large space for them to write. And it's incredible what people are willing to share when you frame it like that. It really does get them to open up. And that gives us something to talk about when we meet in person. My clients fall into sort of two camps. They're usually either really busy families, two working parents, work full time, have young kids. That's me. I run two businesses, have two kids, and it's a lot. And if I'm not careful, life can get very, very stressful. My clients are often also like me in the sense that we're the sandwich generation. Anybody here might know what this feels like, where you're taking care of young kids, but also helping to care for aging parents. And then the other one are tech professionals who are very busy CEOs running companies. And both of these types of clients that I tend to have a relationship with, there is just inherently a lot of stress in their homes. And so these questions get them to open up about that and how can we create an environment at home that is a place where they can rest and recharge and is a reprieve and is completely tailored to what they need. So questions like this have nothing to do with design and is sometimes a little unexpected, but that makes the in-person interview that much more easy to get into the detail or sort of get into that conversation because they know where I'm coming from and why I'm asking these questions and why it's important to understand that.
You know, that question reminds me of a quote from Sarah Robinson, an architect out of Italy, in her book Mind in Architecture. And she says, our architecture and design act as our surrogate bodies. And it's really an interesting way to think about the environment that we're in that is protecting us and nurturing us. Ty Farrow goes on to say that design is never neutral. It can either hurt or help. And it's just an interesting, revelation that's happening in the world of neuroaesthetics and helping us all better understand the incredible importance of what we do in the world of interior design. We create environments that heal. And so I just think we need to internalize that as an industry. Rebecca?
Yeah, I wanted to build on that. And Kate brought something up. We hadn't even talked about this previously. I'm glad she brought it up. So my miniature origin story is I brought my grandmother to come live with us in 2016. And I worked with an interior designer. This is the first time I realized the power of interior designers and what they do. And we literally integrated her into our home and built a space that I'm sitting in right now, actually, that helped her thrive and helped prolong her life and her quality of life and helped her be part of our family, but separate as far as her privacy. And that was really what got me really interested in interior design and the power of it, because I saw it literally in front of my eyes change her health and function because we gave her a space that worked better for her. And so to everyone that's creating those spaces for people, specifically aging parents or grandparents in my case, you don't know how important it is. It just changes lives. It changes relationships. A second thing I wanted to bring up, I've talked to a lot of designers about how we get this information, and Kate talked about the questionnaire. One of the things I've come up with is they say, I'm almost afraid to get the information because I'm not going to know what to do with it. And I just wanted to put this out there to give yourself a little bit more faith or a little bit more confidence that it's not going to be something like rocket science. It's going to be, I'm hard of hearing, if they put that on there. And you know about fabrics, right? And you know about I'm sure how much fabric in a room can change some of the acoustics of a room. And it doesn't have to be, third level black belt advanced, design on top of it. A lot of it is just, I noticed you said that, you're hard of hearing. So we chose this fabric or this window covering in this area because this is where I anticipate you might be talking to your family, and that will help kind of reduce some of the echo or improve the acoustics. And so I just don't want you to worry too much that you're not going to know what to do with it. And there's so many tools now with AI. If you need more ideas of the information that you've come across or that has been volunteered to you, this is new in the past year or so, you can plug it in there and just see if there's any ideas or even any research behind how you might be able to help design with that. And so AI has really helped level some of the playing fields, that a lot of the information isn't just stuck in science or medicine anymore. It's more available. So for me, just to answer the question we were talking about, a question that helps me make a diagnosis is when there's a lot of things going on, I always ask them and I say, pick 3 of the most important things going on right now or that are bothering you the most. And that helps me focus, it helps them focus, and then it helps me prioritize. Because sometimes you have too much information overload, especially when I do brain injury medicine. There's so many different parts and symptoms from a brain injury. And I have them volunteer to tell me, or I have them tell me, without me leading them, what are the top 3 things? And that's one of my best questions to get to the diagnosis or get to a treatment plan. And it helps me focus down on what's most important to them.
So you're in the first part of your answer, you're really saying, go ahead and ask some of those health-based questions. What are some of the health challenges that you experience? And let me see if I can apply design solutions that will help those health challenges.
Yes, I've had designers tell me they don't want to ask those questions because they think they may lose business, that it may be embarrassing to their client or a turn off. And then I've also had interior designers tell me I'm also afraid to ask those questions because I feel like I won't know what to do with the information anyway. And that's why I just wanted to kind of give a bridging thought that I think you will. And sometimes I get information as a physician that I don't know what to do with. It doesn't really fit in, and I don't do anything doesn't necessarily need a treatment, but it's offered to me. So it's not like 100% of what's volunteered has to be 100% integrated into the design. It might just be one thing that stands out to you that you feel like, hey, we're making a design choice right now, A or B, and that, could be something helpful to know. So I don't feel the extra pressure that you've somehow got to be magically able to deal with the information. You would just sort through it and figure out what might be relevant to the choices you're making at the time.
Okay.
Can I add to that?
Sure.
She's so right. One of the things when we're doing that initial client interview, I say to them is, we're going to get into some weird stuff. We're going to get into, personal stuff. You can always say, you don't, if there's anything I ask that you're not comfortable talking about, just say so. That's never happened, by the way. And I also say, some of it may feel really irrelevant to what we're here to do in interior design. But these conversations are also can be a hotbed of creative inspiration, but also help me to connect the dots with some things that I can do in design to help improve your well-being. And some of it may be obvious right away, and some of it may need to simmer, and some of it may not be relevant at all, but we're gonna go through it. But I think that you have to move past your own insecurities when asking these questions. If you are a residential interior designer, it is incredibly personal what we do. And if you cannot ask questions to get to know your clients on a personal level, it is a huge missed opportunity. You are in their homes, you're in their money, you're in their marriages. There's nothing quite more personal than those things. So you're doing yourself and your client a disservice if you can't get past your own insecurities of asking these questions. There are ways to ask questions tactfully and tastefully, and you can read body language and know when to pull back. or if somebody's just not interested in talking about it. I asked a client one time, a couple, about where they grew up and what were their home environments like as youngsters. And the woman had this like beautiful upbringing on a farm where she was outside all the time, and she went on and on and on about it. And then I turned to her husband, and he was like, I grew up in boarding school, next question. And that was my cue to just not press him on that and to move on. So you use the context to guide you, but really know that this can make you a better designer.
You're really acting as a therapist at times, aren't you?
Oh yeah, 1000%.
So embrace it.
Yeah.
And so what gave you, what kind of thing, you're talking about insecurities. What gave you the confidence to be able to approach your clients that way?
I mean, part of it is just I come by it honestly. I mean, I just picked my mom up from the airport last week, and she got off the plane with her new best friend, and she knew his whole backstory and life story, and she's not afraid. She's even not afraid to go there more than I am. And so part of it is just my personality, but really it comes down to understanding that this information can be incredibly helpful in guiding the design from a design standpoint, from a well-being standpoint, from a budgetary standpoint. So you just got to get in there and ask it. You just
I would say knowledge as well, that
Oh yeah.
you know so much more about health benefits and the way design acts as an alternative health resource.
Well, you're right. And if I could just add to that, now that you've said that, I was at a consultation last week, and we were talking about the project, and I don't remember specifically what we were talking about, but there was the views to the outdoors. They have this gorgeous outdoor backyard that is just stunning. And then they have this tiny little window over the kitchen. And they love to cook. They love to be in their kitchen. And, I talked about opening and expanding that window. And I was able to lean on my knowledge from science and design to plug in a factoid about how having those views having access to views to the outside can help reduce cortisol levels, can help, improve your mood. And so that was a direct reflection from learning what I did in science and design, and how
basic biophilic principle, prospect and refuge. Yep.
Exactly.
So Rebecca, you taught a class in the certification program, and inside your class, you referred to the FINE method. Can you just talk a little bit about what the FINE method is?
Sure. So it reflects my preoccupation with acronyms. So I guess I just like to organize thoughts in a way that makes it easier for me to remember. And so the FINE acronym just reflected a potential process that somebody could engage in looking at the design. The first one was feeling, and we talked a lot about getting patients, or in your case, clients, to articulate how they want the space to make them feel. And a big part of that was a graphic in there, the feelings, wheel of like different words, so that, they don't just say feel, like Kate said, feel warm, or like my kids just went back to school and how was school? Good. Right. And so what you're up against is the brain's natural tendency to offer a vague first one-worded response. It's just the most energy efficient thing to do. And so to push back against that goes back into that second or third order feeling questions, and giving them actual new words that they could use, like energized or curious. And then I think for a designer, that's when the electricity starts to flow. Like I can actually, okay, I can do more with that. I mean, good is not, I can't really do much with that, right? So the I part was the intent, like what's the functional intent of the space? And that goes back to my example earlier of there's a space that's intended to host conversations, and that patient or that client is hard of hearing or just wants to have conversations. Does the design match the intent of the space? What actions, what parts of their lives are occurring there? The N is just narrative. That goes back, that was my way of capturing the person's personal narrative of what other personal challenges or preference they have. And it just walked through a way to get through sensory issues they might have, like vision or hearing, balance and mobility, like what's personal about them that we can integrate into the design. And then Elevate was really just a way of encouraging, as we've been talking about today, design professionals to take credit for being interested in parts of health and how their design may impact health. My opinion, kind of like you said earlier, Mike, there is no neutral design, is if you're picking out a toilet height and a surface on which they walk, you're already participating in their health, whether we call it that or not. I mean, these are all these different variables, right? And how somebody functions in their space. There's way more variables in the environment than I have as a physician, right? I mean, I can do medications, some therapy. I just have a couple things I can toggle, but in an environment, it's almost unlimited things you can toggle to help improve health or help improve function overall. So that's my version of an acronym, just to make it easier for me to think about and talk about.
Very interesting. Yeah, and connects us all in the design industry more and more towards the health aspect of what we do. So the last question, Kate, is for you, and that is, you are science and design certified. And you took Rebecca's class. What did you learn essentially from Rebecca, and maybe from the course overall?
Sure. First of all, Rebecca, I love an acronym. So I love the FIND method. One of the things specifically that Rebecca talked about was the importance of asking for really specific information. So an example, like from the social aspect, which we talked about a bit earlier, is not just asking, do you like to entertain, which is a yes or no answer, but how often do you entertain? How many times a year? How many people? For some people, this is me, I love to entertain. Like, being able to entertain is very much a part of creating a social network of people. And I don't have a large social network, but the social network I have is very meaningful to me. So being able to have a space where we can host people helps improve quality of life. And that's really important to people who enjoy doing that. Physical environment, or talking about physical health. Where do you exercise? How and what types of exercises do you do? If you can't get to the gym, where do you fit that in at home? So the importance of the specificity of the questions, I thought was really important, that Rebecca taught in her lessons, that I've gone on to incorporate into my conversations.
Okay.
And and if I could just really quick, this is back to what Rebecca was saying a minute ago about don't feel like you have to be an expert on everything right off the bat. But one of the things I've done is you can set up Google alerts for specific keywords. And I've done this so that you get alerted when this term is in the media. So the term neuroaesthetics is a term that you can set on a Google alert. So once a week, if there's an article or a podcast or something like that that's come out that's on the topic of neuroaesthetics, you can just kind of stay up to date with the news and the information around that specific topic. So it's something that will happen over time. And I just remembered that and wanted to share that little tip.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So listen, we're going to open it up for questions. We already have a question from Gabrielle, who is in the process of taking the science and design certification right now. Gabrielle is in Toronto, and she prides herself on being the first neuroaesthetically driven design firm in all of Toronto. And her question is, how can designers protect themselves from legal responsibility regarding any medical conditions and recommending any design elements to help? Of course, mentioning you're not a medical professional, it goes hand in hand with that. But is there any concern that either of you have in terms of legal responsibility by asking some detailed health questions?
I can start with that. So a couple of keys would be, one, the information has to be voluntary. So like if you have a form that they fill out, I would make that field not a required form with a little asterisk up there. So because information that's shared voluntary as part of any project, like you can disclose health information to your own benefit. It's the legal issues come in when I've disclosed it in the course of medical care and I've entrusted it to a medical professional, and then they throw it in the trash can or sell it or something like that. So obviously the disclaimers are important for all sorts of reasons of everything. Like here's the in the scope of what I do, and here's why I'm using it. And kind of the Kate's prompt that she gave talked about why she's using the information and it's not required. So I mean, of course, if you're really concerned, if you want to consult with an attorney on the exact verbiage of a disclaimer, I think that would be important. But I mean, there's a huge pendulum, right, towards privacy, and there should be a lot of protected information in healthcare. Currently, the biggest issues are digital information being stolen or on the healthcare side. But I'm also concerned that that would preclude somebody from sharing information that would change their space and make them healthier, if that makes sense. So I would find what works for you. It might vary by the jurisdiction that you're in, but a good number of disclaimers, I think, and then handling it. And even in healthcare, the biggest thing is to communicate and tell them why you're asking that information. And we've talked a lot about that today, because then it's not coming out of nowhere. It's not surprising, but basically it needs to be voluntary, not mandatory, and then needs to have some sort of information about how it's going to be used.
Okay.
That's
Now,
good.
I just saw another statement here. Sarah is telling us that Art Digest just did an article on neuroaesthetics. Sarah, do you know which issue that is? Can you put that in the chat? Is it the last issue? Is it 3 issues ago? If you know that answer, please share it. And we have Lena essentially saying, hello, I'm also taking the course right now. Was curious, how do you get to know clients in such a deep at such a deep level if you're designing for a public space? There's an interesting question.
I have a background in commercial design. That's what I did before I moved into residential, and it's definitely different. The programming aspect is done by usually multiple stakeholders, and the goals there are really thinking about who's going to be occupying this space. And we get the high level design brief from those stakeholders, but then also for example, we did some offices for Trimble in Broomfield here. And well, actually a better example would be one of the last projects I worked on in commercial was the Rosandum Domestic Violence Center. And what we were designing was this space where people who had been victims of domestic violence and sexual abuse could come to this center, and it was designed in a way to be psychologically very safe and secure. So in order to even get into the offices, they were behind multiple locked doors that nobody could get through. And so we had to do a lot of learning about what are people experiencing going through psychologically here when getting into this space. And then the space itself, we designed a children's playroom in a circular shape with the interview rooms around it, so that these were just typically mothers with young kids could have a visual eye on their children who are playing, with the privacy and confidentiality of the glass in between them. So thinking about, in those cases, we were talking with social workers, and those were the stakeholders. We were talking with psychologists and social workers. We got information from past victims that was anonymized and shared with us. But again, like in office spaces and public spaces, you get programming from the people who are actually using the spaces to find out what are they needing. The CEO is not necessarily going to be the right person to ask about the people who are sitting in an open office environment. Their needs are going to be a little bit different. So making sure that you're sort of engaging with the right people when it comes to designing the right spaces.
Okay. All right. By the way, Sarah has shared, and so has Regina. The article is online in Art Digest, and the article title is "Can a Bad Floor Plan Affect Your Mental Health?"
I just opened the picture, and it's a good example.
Yeah. And so, and again, here's Art Digest, and for me, coming out of the luxury design magazine publishing business, to have an Art Digest, which, is a celebrity kind of design magazine, they always like to put a celebrity on the cover. For them now to be talking about mental health, that this movement, this thing that we're experiencing now in interior design is here to stay. So don't be surprised if you see a lot more of that happening in the months and the years to come. Let me see. Are there any other questions? Bill out of, I think, Manitoba says it's a partial comment. Environments have a meaningful impact on humans' physical and mental well-being for neuroaesthetics, an emerging field of neuroscience. You betcha. You betcha. And I mentioned the book earlier by Ty Farrow. I heartily recommend getting Constructing Health. It is an excellent, the book, I think I've mentioned it before. The book is a beast. It's got to be 20 pounds, but it is so thorough and deep. But please, and it would be an interesting, a pretty good idea to get the book and read it before we have Ty come on in October. So go ahead and if you can get that book, he just says the words in a very meaningful way that you totally understand them, and he's corroborating his message with other academics and scholars. So I heartily recommend that. Any last questions? Oh, there's one new one here. Hold on. Okay, here's Deborah Soulier saying, Constructing Health is amazing. I have reviewed it from cover to cover. Deborah, I totally agree. My copy is filled with Post-it notes of bits of information that I use on a regular basis. So, yeah, and anyway, any last questions? So if not, a couple reminders. Please join us at October Market for When Design Heals. It's a day that is going to be filled with knowledge and education. The first half of the day is science and biophilia. The second half of the day is filled with marketing, messaging, and incorporating a new message for your business based on science. You've heard us mention several times the certification program. Please take a look at it. And you know what? I do this every now and then. Based on you attending this session, if you sign up for the certification program, use this promo code SID100, SID100, and it'll save you a little bit of money. You've heard from several people already that have taken the course or are taking the course, and it's changing their business model. Let me see. The other thing is, at our last symposium at High Point Market, virtually everybody in the room asked us to start a science and design community on LinkedIn. Well, there's a community on LinkedIn now, so go ahead and sign up and let's start talking to each other in between webinars. Now I have Lena asking a question. Is any part of it going to be covered online, or can we view video coverage after the live event? No, Lena, we're not going to be videoing When Design Heals. So I hope you can make it to High Point on October 24th. It'll be worth your while. Yay, going to join the community right now. All right, so listen, guys, if there are no other questions, let's call it a day. I want to thank, there's Gabrielle. Hey, Gabrielle.
I have a quick question, Mike.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you have a link to the science and design community that's on LinkedIn? I would love to join.
Just type in science and design community and it'll take you there.
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Hope to see everybody in High Point. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye now.